Hey, this is Frank again calling. Um, I wanted to talk today about something which is not really a positive issue, that is thievery. I'm thinking about thievery because of my sort of new job that I'm doing right now, which is I'm one of those people at the door of a store who says hello to everybody going in and goodbye to everybody going out. But one of my primary jobs really is to keep my eyes out for thieves. And it's not something I've really thought much about in the past. You know, the people who go into a store and just decide that they want something but they can't afford it. It's sometimes very easy for them to just take it. And, a lot of stores are just full of cameras, I would inform people. So that, you think you're getting away with it, but somebody's watching you and maybe live. You're probably your best chance is that nobody live is watching. But if somebody is live watching you on camera, then they will stop you once you leave the store. And see, the reason this is kind of a weird concept for me in general is that I'm not much of a thief, and I try to be as honest as I can about this, but I've stolen less than $100 worth of stuff in my entire life, and I bet there's people out there who have stolen almost nothing. But I when I was a little kid, I stole a newspaper off of a neighbor's front porch. It was kind of a dare. I was about 8 years old at the time, or 9 years old. And then when we were like 13 or 14, we stole flares off of a school bus. And then when I was about 18, a friend of mine was a thief, and I went to visit him at a store that he worked at. And as I walked in the front door, he handed me a bag full of LP records and said, "Run." And I turned around and I went back to my car, and then he took the LP records later anyway, so I didn't really get anything out of that. I've gone onto my neighbor's property and taken wood that had fallen down, like old logs that the tree fell down, and I needed to burn some wood, and I took some wood off of the property of my neighbor, and he called the police on me, even though that wood, I'm. But that's kind of the thinking behind theft is, that wood was just going to sit there and rot, right? But it was on his property and his woods that was like near my house. It was an empty woods, and the wood was falling down off of a tree, and I took it and brought it home and burned it in my fireplace. And he called the police on me because that was his property, that was his wood. And, that is about the total sum of everything I've ever stolen in my life. And I guess the last example is a good example of the nebulousness of private property. Because, you think about it, in my way of thinking at that time was that, this is just going to rot, and it may be on his property, but I could just take it and burn it. But it was his wood on his property that he owned as a possession. And that calls into question the whole concept of theft in general, which is, private ownership of property. And in private ownership of property, it's Marx talks about it a lot, and it's a concept that is written into the law very detailed and minutely. But what I think in general is that private ownership of property is sort of and this is what Marxists will argue with me about this, but it is almost a genetic part of our structure in that, if you think about the birds in your front yard in the springtime, the robin singing in the lawn and just happy song. You think, oh, what a happy song. He's singing in the springtime. But what he's really doing is the male robin is sitting up there and he's saying to all the other robins, stay the hell off of my private property. Because the robins have a certain area that they consider their own. The male robin and the female robin, they mate, and the male robin stands out there and tells all the other robins, stay the hell out of my yard. And the other birds may or may not listen, but that's what they're really singing about. It's kind of a cynical way of looking at things. So really, what the robin needs is a certain amount of material area that he owns in order to be prosperous enough to raise his brood and have a successful family. So, and they've done experiments on this. As soon as one robin leaves or dies, another robin will move right into that area. So they consider it. They consider these areas to be their own private property, and that's kind of where we're at, in the world today. We all have our own, and the idea of socialism and capitalism and all that, can be debated quite a bit, but even in the most socialist countries, I think, you have a certain sense of possession about your material things. So like if you have a ring that you wear and that your mother gave you, or your father, it was passed on from her mother to her, to then it gives it to her daughter, and the daughter wears that ring. If somebody else takes that ring, even in a socialist country, it's considered to be something like theft, because that is your own private ownership of that property. So let's talk about thieves, okay? There's seems to be thieves, since, like I say, I'm not much of a thief. I personally don't care that much about things. I have a lot of things, a good amount of things anyway, but it doesn't seem worthwhile to me to have to steal something, except in the case of that log, right? But mostly it doesn't, if I see, like I was at the store and I saw this, or I see a place and they have a nice looking saw that's sitting up on the side of somebody's house and the house is abandoned or whatever, well, that's their saw, right? Or if I see something in the store like a pair of boots that I like, I might take my old boots off and put on the new boots and walk out. But to me, new boots are not worth that much to me that I would actually have to go and steal them. It's not that important to me, to have to put to put my dignity and my self awareness and my sense of pride on the line to have to actually steal something that's material. Now, there's, we'll cut it down to the very quick, but if you are starving, and let's say you're a mother and you're starving and your children are starving, and then you go into a place and you start stealing apples off of orchards, trees, say, I'm bringing these apples home to my kids, even though it belongs to somebody else. In a way, that's a kind of forgivable, I guess. You're in a desperate, life-threatening situation, and the only way you can think of getting out of it maybe is by stealing. Now, as everybody will tell you, there's public assistance nowadays, and even though a lot of people don't even want public assistance, I mean, Ayn Rand considers taxation to be theft. So if we don't have any public assistance because we can't pay for it because of taxation, because she considers that to be theft, then the only other recourse that a lot of poor people would have is actual theft. So, I mean, these things are nebulous at best. These are gray areas. But we try to provide enough public assistance in the SNAP program, which is supplemental nutrition, that anybody who can't afford food can probably get food through one of these food cards, and you go to the store and it works just like money, which is better than stealing. But still, people steal a lot of stuff, a lot of food, even. They can't figure out how to make that money for their their government assistance last the whole month or something, or it doesn't get them the kind of food they want, so they still go into stores and steal. And here's I'm kind of halfway between being a capitalist and a socialist. Okay, now don't misunderstand me. Like I said, even in the socialist country, they have a such thing as private property. But in a capitalist country, there's hoarding of private property, of course. There's guys who have billions of dollars and other people who have nothing and they're starving and they live in the street. And it seems inequitable. And the people who are starving and living in the streets may morally justify them going into the stores that are owned by billionaires and stealing from them. But the problem with that is, let's say the worst neighborhoods, the ones that have the poorest citizens, they go into these places. They open up a grocery store in a poor neighborhood, and a bunch of the people go into the grocery store and rob it constantly, stealing, right? Because they don't have any money, and they figure, these are rich people. They deserve to be robbed and so forth. And so what happens is that the store can't make a profit because so much of it gets stolen that they have to close the store down. Now these poor neighborhoods don't have grocery stores. And that happens all the time. They say, oh, we can't get any good food in the inner city or because they don't have any good grocery stores. But they opened up grocery stores and they had to close down because they couldn't make a profit because so much was stolen. So I mean, I guess people think profit is a dirty word, but how do you pay your employees if you don't have money? I mean, and I'm sure a lot of those places don't open out of charity. Well, let me see if another example of theft is what every single day, I get these telephone calls on my regular line, and it's usually a foreign person, somebody calling from India or Pakistan or something, and they're trying to rob me. They're trying to pick my pocket or pick the government's pocket. Like the one that's pretty common is Medicare. If you're a Medicare recipient, somehow they get your name and they want you to give them your Medicare number. And if they get your Medicare number, they're going to file some sort of a thing with Medicare that you supposedly bought. And then they file that with Medicare, and it goes against your deductible, though, so you may have to pay something for it. But not really that much, because the government ends up paying out of their coffers for your Medicare payment. And these people just want that number so that they can pick your pocket, pick the government's pocket, stealing. Foreigners. And that's just one. There's also the Social Security. They try to get you to buy these Apple Pay cards to pay for something that they say you owe them. You didn't pay your bill on your credit card, or that's another one. They try to get your credit card number by claiming they're the credit card company, and it's one thief after another. It must. I know for a fact that the unemployment compensation was ripped off in this state for billions of dollars by thieves, foreigners, thieves. There's thieves all around us. If you leave something out on your porch, and it's not nailed down, and especially if you're in the city, some thief will come along and steal it. If you try to open up a grocery store in the city or in a lot of places, anywhere really, A bunch of thieves will come in and steal it. So I'm trying to come to grips with a lot of these people and their mindset about how come they are thieves, because there's so many of them, and maybe I'm just concentrating on it because I have to look out for them. But if you have a place to live, a warm place to live, and maybe even a car, and you eat every day, then why in the hell, what moral fiber are you lacking that makes you want to go steal something from somebody else? I mean, I guess you can use the excuse that I'm really a communist, you see, and I don't believe in the material possessions of individuals, but that's not even it. I mean, maybe that's kind of too deep a thinking for a lot of these people. They're just lazy and evil. That's the only thing I can come up with. You don't, because what happens, as I gave an example, when you go in the inner city and you steal all the grocery out of the grocery store, what ends up happening is you have no grocery store. So what do the thieves care? I got mine. But the rest of the people suffer because there's nowhere to shop for good food anymore. You got to either figure out a way to get out away from the city, or you got to go and not eat any decent groceries. You eat crappy food, I mean, the idea is that when you become a thief and you start taking care of yourself without considering that you have to earn what you own, then what you're doing is you're destroying the well-being of almost everybody else around you. I had some guy one time when I was working. I had a job where I went to a bunch of different places, stores, little stores and stuff. And I had a young man come up to me one time in the city, and he said to me, "Well, can you explain to me why I shouldn't steal? What good does it do me to not steal if I can get away with it?" And the only answer I could come up with was, if you are a regular thief, it gets out that you're a regular thief. People around you know that you're a regular thief, and people don't trust you. And if some opportunity opens up for you, and they look at you and they say, "Should I give this guy the opportunity?" They're going to deny you that opportunity because they know you're a thief. But it's not only that. It's like, it's a matter of dignity, individual dignity. If you have such a low opinion of yourself that you think that the only way you can get by in the world is by hurting other people, then, and when you steal from other people, whether they're rich people or not, you're hurting them. Well, if that's the only way that you think you can get by, then you lack a certain sense of dignity. So anyway, that's my idea.